In the autumn of 1066, the longships returned one last time. Not for trade, not for diplomacy, but for glory. King Harald Hardrada of Norway, once a Varangian guard in the courts of Byzantium, launched an invasion of England-owned final campaign to claim a crown across the sea. He was no raider. He was a warrior king, hardened by battles in the east, ruler of a united Norway, and heir to the Viking world's dying ambition. With hundreds of ships and thousands of men, he crossed the North Shanat to plunder, but to conquer. At first, he triumphed. The Viking banner flew high after the Battle of Fulford. But even as he celebrated, another army approached. It was bold. It was brilliant. It was doomed. Harald's invasion was not just a campaign. It was the last breath of an age. One final dragon-proud fleet sailed to war not as raiders in the night, but as kings daring to reshape the world. And though the end lay just days ahead, in that moment, the North remembered its fire. On the 25th of September 1066, the Viking Age came to a battlefield. At Stamford Bridge, two kings meet home born of England, the other forged in the fires of the Old Norse world. Harald Hardrada of Norway, legendary warrior, faced Harold Godwinson, king of a rising England. The Vikings, fresh from victory at Fulford, were unprepared resting, many without armor, caught off guard by the speed of their enemy. The English stormed the bridge. A lone Viking, legend says, held the crossing single-handedly, buying his army precious time. Then the full battle began. It was brutal, relentless. Hardrada, tall and unshaken, led from the front until an arrow found his throat. The last great Viking king fell where he stood. His army, cornered and leaderless, fought to the death. By sunset, thousands lay dead. Only a handful of ships returned to Norway. This was more than a defeat. It was an ending. No great Viking army would ever again land on English soil. At Stamford Bridge, the age of raids and warlords died, and history turned the page. Just 3 weeks after Stamford Bridge, another army crossed the sea. This one came from the south, not from Scandinavia, but from Normandy. Its leader was William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy. He too sought the English crown. And like Harald Hardrada before him, William claimed royal blood and destiny. But William was no outsider. He was a descendant of Vikings. His great-great-grandfather was Rollo, a Norse warrior who once raided France and was granted land to end the raids. That land became Normandy, and the Norse who settled there became Normans. They built castles, adopted French language and customs, and embraced Christianity. But the fire of the North still burned in their blood. At the Battle of Hastings, William defeated Harold Godwinson, who had just repelled the last Viking invasion. With that victory, a descendant of Vikings became King of England not by raid, but by right. The conquest was complete. The Viking Age had ended in battle, but its legacy now ruled from the throne. The raiders had become rulers, and the Norse spirit lived on reborn in crown, court, and kingdom. The Viking Age may have ended in battle, but its echoes live on in words. Walk through England, Ireland, or Normandy, and you'll find them everywhere. York, Grimsby, Skye. These names are not English. They are Norse. The Vikings left their mark not just in stone and story, but in language. From sky to egg, from knife to window, Norse words slipped into English like raiders into a harbor. They brought clarity, simplicity, and a northern rhythm. Even everyday speech bears their legacy words like they, them, and take. And then there are the names Eric, Ingrid, Gunnar. Carried by settlers and kings, these names survived dynasties, borders, and centuries. Viking place names remain like footprints across the land towns, ending in by, Thorpe, and Wick. reminders of old farms, villages, and harbors. This was not the erasure of a culture, it was a fusion. A blend of Norse and native tongues that reshaped how people spoke, wrote, and even thought. The Viking voice still whispers in the words we use every day, not as conquerors, but as part of who we are. They called them sea dragons long, narrow and swift as the wind. Viking longships were marvels of craftsmanship, shallow enough to glide through winding rivers, strong enough to cross vast oceans. Their hulls were clinker-built overlapping planks bound with iron rivets, flexible, fast, and elegant. From forest to fjord, these ships were carved by hand, shaped by generations of shipwrights who passed their craft like sacred lore. Each dragon-headed prow told a story of gods, clans, and courage. These ships spoke before their crews ever did. Powered by oar and sail, the longship gave Vikings unmatched freedom. No coast was out of reach. No current could bar their path. They raided, they traded, they discovered. And wherever they sailed, they left more than fear, they left influence. From medieval European navies to modern engineering halls, Viking design echoed onward. Today, their spirit lives on, in reconstructed hulls, in museum halls, in the hands of children learning their ancestors' craft. The longship was more than wood and iron. It was vision. It was power. It was the Norse soul made sail. Not all Viking legacies were forged in iron. Some were spoken then, remembered. Long before written law, the Norse ruled through assemblies called things. These gatherings brought free men together to settle disputes, pass judgment, and shape their society. In Iceland, the Althing became one of the world's oldest parliaments, founded in 930 AD and still meeting today. There were no kings handing down decrees. Justice came from the people themselves. Oral law carried in memory, spoken aloud, passed from one generation to the next was central. Witnesses, not documents, proved truth. And in place of royal courts, communal consensus shaped the verdicts. This model spread, influencing early governance in parts of Britain, Ireland, and even Norman law. The sword enforced order, but the voice defined it. And in these early assemblies, we see the roots of systems still used today: open debate, jury trials, and democratic councils. The Vikings may be remembered as warriors, but they were also lawmakers, and their laws didn't vanish. They evolved. Though their ships returned to harbor and their swords were sheathed, the Vikings never truly disappeared. They lived on in words, in stories, in firelit songs passed down through the ages. The Icelandic sagas, the poetic and prose Eddas, and medieval chronicles preserve the voices of a world where gods and mortals walked side by side. Thor, the Thunderer. Odin, the one-eyed wanderer. Loki, the trickster in shadow. These figures outlived their altars. They crossed into Christian Europe, cloaked in folklore, reshaped as legend. In the 19th century, romantic writers and nationalist thinkers rediscovered them, recasting Norse myths as the heritage of a heroic, untamed past. The Viking became more than history. He became a symbol, a rebel, a wanderer, a fire that would not go out. Today, these tales live on in novels, films, games, and music. From high fantasy to heavy metal, Viking myth breathes anew. In every retelling, the gods ride again, and through them, the Old North still dreams. The Viking Age is over, but the Vikings never truly vanished. Their swords may rest in museums, and their ships lie silent in wood and stone, but their spirit endures. Today, the Norse live on in ways they could never have imagined. In festivals where thousands gather in furs and chainmail to reenact raids and rituals. In heavy metal, where thunderous riffs echo the rage of gods and warriors. In museums, where longships stand like sleeping giants under glass. In fantasy films, novels, and games where Thor swings his hammer and sagas unfold anew. The Viking is no longer feared, but admired. Not as a raider, but as a symbol of resilience, freedom, and identity. Around the world, people wear Mjolnir pendants, trace their ancestry to fjords, and name their children after Norse gods. The Viking Age ended in 1066, but the Viking afterlife is now. It's alive in story, in culture, in every soul that dares to stand bold against the storm.